The new director stood by the glass wall. The city glittered behind him, like it was in on the joke. He smirked. His voice dripped with fake sympathy. "You've done some nice work, Ava, but you've become a bottleneck." Laughter rippled through the room. It was shallow, nervous laughter. It was the sound of people desperate to align with whoever held power. I didn't move. I just looked at him. I memorized his smirk. I memorized every cowardly smile. I memorized every face that looked away from me. I saw Sarah from accounting, the one whose wedding shower I threw. She was studying her shoes. I saw Tom from marketing, the one I mentored. He was suddenly very interested in a spot on the ceiling. They didn't know what was really happening. They thought this was just a simple, brutal firing. But the man walking up behind the director did, because the founder himself, the name on the building, had just walked in. My name is Ava Collins, and I am 33 years old. That was the day they tried to erase me. They thought I was just a piece of old furniture to be thrown out. But they didn't know I was the one who built the house. Before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe. Drop a comment and tell me where you are watching from. To understand what happened in that glass room, you need to know how we got there. It didn't start with glass walls and expensive suits. It started in a basement. When I joined the company 11 years ago, it wasn't an empire. It wasn't even a real office. It was a rented basement. The room smelled like damp concrete and old pipes. The only light came from two small, high windows that were level with the sidewalk outside. We could see people's feet walk by. The desks were just two long folding tables from a hardware store. We had one coffee pot. It was always burning. We all took turns buying the coffee. It wasn't a company. It was just a dream surviving on caffeine and courage. There were only 3 of us then. First, there was Mark, the founder. He had the big idea. He was brilliant, and he was passionate. He was always drawing on whiteboards, his hands covered in marker. He lived on energy drinks and never seemed to sleep. Then there was Ben, a junior developer. He was just out of college. He typed so fast it sounded like rain hitting a window. He was quiet and shy, but he was a genius with code. And then there was me. My official title was Operations Manager, but that was a joke. We had no operations. I was hired to help. We had no structure. We had no HR department. We had no employee handbook. If the internet went down, I was the one who spent 2 hours on the phone with the provider. If we ran out of paper for the old printer, I was the one who went to the store. If the single toilet backed up, I was the one who called the plumber. We had no paycheck for the first 6 months. Not one. I lived on my tiny savings. I ate instant noodles and peanut butter sandwiches for dinner every night. I remember Ben's car getting towed. He couldn't pay his parking tickets. He was so embarrassed he almost quit. Mark sold his own rare record collection, one by one, just to pay the rent for that basement. We weren't employees. We were believers. We were a strange, stressed-out, broke little family. I was the one who built the company part. I created our first filing system. I used colored binders from a discount store. I wrote our first client contracts. I didn't know how. I just downloaded templates online and stayed up all night reading them over and over. I tried to understand the legal words. I tried to make sure we were protected. I built our partnerships. Mark and Ben were too busy building the product. I was the one who had to sell it. I was 24 years old. I had one good blazer. I bought it at a thrift store. I wore it to every meeting. I remember our first big client. It was a mid-level insurance firm. Their office was all dark wood and thick carpets. I sat in their lobby, and my hands were shaking so hard I had to sit on them. I was terrified, but I knew our product. I knew what we had built in that basement. I believed in it, so I stopped shaking. I walked in, and I made the presentation. I got the contract. That one contract paid for our first real office. It was a small room on the second floor of an old building, but it had windows. It had real desks. It paid our first real salaries. I remember crying when I saw that first paycheck. I built our culture. I started Pizza Fridays. I remembered people's birthdays. I was the one who listened when Ben's girlfriend broke up with him. I was the one who listened when Mark was afraid his big idea would fail. We grew. We hired more people. We got a bigger office. 2 years in, we were finally stable. We had 10 employees. We were making a name for ourselves. Then Mark got sick. It was sudden. One day he was at the whiteboard excited about a new feature. The next day his wife called me crying. He had collapsed at home. It was serious. It was a problem with his heart. He needed months of treatment. He couldn't work. He couldn't even think about work. The doctors told him the stress would kill him. The company almost fell apart. Our new investors got scared. They wanted to pull their money. Our employees were worried. They started looking for other jobs. Ben came to my desk. He looked pale. "Are we done, Ava?" he asked. His eyes were wide with panic. "Is this it?" I looked at him. I looked at the little office we had all built together. "No," I said. "We are not done." I didn't just stay. I carried it. I carried all of it. I learned how to manage the developers. I learned how to talk to the investors. I made spreadsheets. I showed them that we were stable. I promised them we would not fail. I worked 18-hour days. I went home only to sleep for a few hours. Then I came back. I visited Mark in the hospital on my lunch breaks. I brought him the paperwork he needed to sign, but I also brought him spreadsheets. I showed him the numbers. I showed him that we were still growing. "You're doing it, Ava," he whispered one day from his hospital bed. He looked so pale and thin. "We're doing it," I said. "We're just keeping it warm for you." I ran the company by myself for 9 months. When Mark finally came back, he was healthy, but he was different. He was quieter. The fire was still there, but it was softer. He didn't want the stress of being the CEO anymore. He told me the fear had changed him. He wanted to focus on product. He wanted to invent. So he moved to the board. He became the founder and the visionary, and I became the chief operating officer. For the next 10 years, I was the one who made the vision work. I was the one who turned the dream from the basement into an empire of glass walls. I hired every department head. I signed the lease on our new building. I managed the budgets. I kept the promises. I was the backbone. And that, I learned, was a problem. The company had gotten too big. The board, the new investors Mark brought in, said I was too operational. They said I was too in the weeds. They said we needed fresh leadership. That's when they hired him. The board was happy with the money, but they were nervous about me. I didn't go to an Ivy League school. I didn't have an MBA. I had just done the work. They wanted fresh leadership. "We need a fresh face for the IPO, Ava," one of the investors told me. He said it over a lunch that I was paying for with the company card. "We need someone who speaks the language of Wall Street." I didn't speak the language of Wall Street. I spoke the language of our clients. I spoke the language of our developers. I spoke the language of our company, but I smiled and I nodded. "I understand," I said. "I will help in any way I can." So they hired him. His name was David Miller. He was exactly what they wanted. He was tall. He had perfect slicked back hair. He wore expensive suits that always looked sharp, even at 5 p.m. He had the right degree from the right school. He came in, and his ambition was like a smell. It filled every room he entered. It was strong and cheap, like bad cologne. He spoke in buzzwords. He loved words like synergy, optimization, leveraging, and future-proofing. He talked a lot, but he never seemed to say anything. On his first day, he called me into his new corner office. It was Mark's old office, the one I had kept clean for all those years, just in case. David had already put his own art on the walls. It was abstract and cold, all sharp lines and angry colors. "Ava, I'm so glad you're here," he said. His smile was wide and white, like a shark's. "I've heard you're you're the engine of this place, the secret weapon," I believed him. That was my first mistake. I wanted the company to succeed. It was my baby. I didn't care about the title. I just cared about the work. I thought we both wanted the same thing. "I'm here to help," I said. "Whatever you need. I want this transition to be smooth." So I helped him. For the first month, I was his shadow. I sat with him for hours. I gave him everything. I explained our model. I explained why we built our system a certain way. I showed him the code I had written with Ben in the basement. I told him why we didn't use the cheap outsourced tools he suggested. "It's slower," I explained. "Our clients value speed. They stay with us because we are reliable." I explained our strategy. I introduced him to our key clients. These were people I had known for 10 years. I had been to their weddings, their kids' birthday parties. "This is David," I said to them. "He's our new director. He's here to help us grow." I gave him my contacts. I gave him my knowledge. I gave him my spreadsheets, my plans, and my passwords. I gave him the keys to the kingdom I had built. He nodded, and he wrote things down on a fancy leather notebook. Brilliant, brilliant, he would say. This is gold, Ava. Pure gold. Then I noticed it. It was small at first. We were in a big board meeting. An investor asked a hard question about our client retention numbers. David stood up. He gave, word for word, the exact answer I had given him over coffee 2 days earlier. Our clients value speed, he said, as if it was his own discovery. Our foundation is built on reliability, not on cheap tricks. That's the core of our brand. The board members nodded. They looked at him. They were impressed. He didn't look at me. He didn't say, as Ava explained to me. He just took the credit. I felt a small, cold knot in my stomach. I told myself it didn't matter. The work was getting done. It happened again. A report I had written, a full 20-page analysis of a new market, appeared in his presentation. My phrases, my analysis, my 3-year plan. His name was on the first slide. I told myself I was being sensitive. I told myself it was for the good of the company. Then he began scheduling briefings without me. I saw a leadership strategy meeting on the calendar. I wasn't invited. I managed 3 of the teams in that meeting. How could they have a strategy meeting without me? I went to his office. His new assistant, a young woman he had hired from his old company, tried to stop me. He's in a very important call, Ava, she said, looking down at me. I walked past her. Ava, he said, looking up from his computer. He was not on a call. He smiled that wide white smile. What's up? I noticed the strategy meeting at 3, I said. My voice was calm. I wasn't on the invite. Was that a mistake? He leaned back in his expensive leather chair. He put his hands behind his head. Oh no, he said, his voice smooth and friendly. I'm handling that one. You've been carrying this place for a decade, Ava. You've been working too hard. You deserve a break, he smiled again. Don't worry about it. I've got this. I walked out of his office. The cold knot in my stomach grew. I finally understood what he meant. You deserve a break meant get out of my way. I've got this meant I'm taking this. He wasn't here to lead. He was here to conquer. And I was the one he was trying to conquer. It wasn't fast. It was slow. It was gradual, like being poisoned, one drop at a time. That's what made it so cruel. First, my responsibilities were rerouted. A project I had managed for 5 years, our biggest client account. The first one I ever signed was given to Tom. Tom from marketing, the one I had mentored. David wants to leverage Tom's marketing synergy on the account, the email said. I went to Tom. Tom, you don't have the background for this, I said, trying to be helpful. This client is very specific. They need a lot of technical support. Let me walk you through the history. He wouldn't look me in the eye. He just stared at his keyboard, David. David said he would handle the transition, Tom stammered. He said you were too busy with your other projects. Too busy. I looked at my calendar. It was empty. For the first time in 10 years, my calendar was empty. I suddenly had all the time in the world. Next, my team was reassigned. The developers I had worked with since the basement. Ben. The quiet ones who I knew by name. The ones whose kids' names I knew. They were moved. They were now under David's new innovation department. That department was run by a new guy, a friend David hired from his old company. My name started vanishing from emails. I would see a long email thread. I would see a problem I knew how to solve in 5 minutes. I would write a reply, clear and helpful. No one would answer me. Then I would see a new email thread, started 5 minutes later with the exact same topic. But my name was gone from the to line. It was like I was a ghost. I was sitting at my desk, but I wasn't there. People walked past my office and didn't look in. I would walk into the break room and the conversation would stop. Oh, Ava, someone would say. We're just finishing up. They were pushing me out. David had made me a pariah. He made me look old. He made me look useless. He called me legacy. Ava is our legacy leadership, he would say in big meetings. It sounded like a compliment. But in the tech world, legacy means old. It means outdated. It means something you are waiting to replace. I was legacy. I was the old code that needed to be rewritten. I tried to talk to Mark, the founder, but he was traveling. He was in Asia, looking at new markets. He was finally happy and healthy. I didn't want to bother him. I didn't want to sound like I was complaining. Everything is great, I told him on our one video call. David is handling things. He's very energetic. I thought I could just wait. I thought I could just do good work. I thought the work would prove my value. I was wrong. David wanted me erased. The proof came on a Tuesday night. It was late. It was 10:43 p.m. I was almost always the last one in the office. It was a habit from the basement days. You never know when a server might crash. An email arrived. It was from David. It was sent to the entire board. I wasn't supposed to be on the email. He must have added me by accident. He must have typed Ava instead of Andrew, our lawyer. I saw the email pop up. My heart stopped. The subject line was, phase out strategy, AC, my initials. My blood went cold. My fingers felt numb. I clicked the email. It was a long thread. It wasn't just David. It was the new investors. I read it. I read it 3 times. My hands were shaking again, just like they did in that lobby all those years ago. David's words, we need a smoother image before the IPO. We must phase out legacy leadership. It's a perception issue. Ava has done great things, but her time is over. We need a clean break for the new narrative. One of the investors replied, agree. Her compensation package is too high for a non-essential role. Handle it quickly. And quietly. Quickly. And quietly. They wanted to fire me, and they wanted to do it in a way that would make me look small and irrelevant. I sat there in the dark office. The only sound was the hum of the server room. They weren't just firing me. They were erasing my history. They were taking the company I built, the company I saved, and acting like I was just a piece of dust to be swept away. I felt sick. I wanted to cry. I wanted to throw my computer against the wall. Instead, I took a deep breath. He just didn't realize who he was dealing with. He didn't realize that in all my years of running operations, I learned one thing. You don't just handle a problem, you document it. You save it. You make copies. He thought I was legacy. He thought I was old code. He didn't realize I'd learned to play the long game. I sat there in the silent, empty office for a long time. The email burned on my screen. Phase out legacy leadership. A non-essential role. Handle it quickly and quietly. My first instinct was to stand up, walk to David's office, and smash his expensive abstract art. I wanted to forward the email to the entire company. I wanted to scream, but I did none of those things. The girl from the basement knew that panic doesn't fix problems. Panic is a luxury. I closed the email. I took a slow, deep breath. Then I took another. My hands were still shaking, but my mind was suddenly perfectly clear. I didn't confront him. I didn't write an angry reply. I didn't quit. I collected. David had made one fatal mistake. He thought because I was legacy, I was stupid. He thought because he controlled the meetings, he controlled the company. He forgot one thing. I was the one who built the systems. I built the servers. I wrote the code for the first admin-level dashboards. I set up the file architecture. And I still had all the keys. He had been so busy pushing me out of meetings that he never bothered to check my access levels. He didn't know what to check. I opened my secure drive. I opened the old email archives. I started to work. My first search was for his quarterly performance reports. The ones he presented to the board. The ones that made him look like a genius. I found them. They were full of impressive graphs and numbers, all going up. User engagement, plus 30%. New client acquisition, plus 22%. He was a good storyteller, but I wasn't looking at his stories. I was looking at the real raw data, the data from the server logs, the data he didn't know how to read. I pulled the real numbers. His 30% engagement increase was a lie. He had changed the definition of engagement from active use to anytime login. He was counting people who opened the app by mistake for half a second. The real engagement, the kind that kept clients paying, was down 8%. His 22% new client acquisition was also a lie. He was counting free trials. He was even counting people who just signed up for our email newsletter. Our actual paid client acquisition was flat. He wasn't growing the company. He was just hiding the decline. I saved the files. I put his fake report and my real data side by side in a new folder. Next, I looked at his budgets. He loved to talk about optimization. He had cut the employee snack budget. He cut the travel budget for the developers. He said we all had to tighten our belts. I opened his expense reports. Tighten our belts apparently did not apply to him $800 dinners, 4 times a week. All listed as client development. but there were never any clients listed. 50,000 B in consulting fees paid to a new one-person company. I looked up the company. The address was a luxury apartment building. The owner's name was the same as the friend he had hired to run the innovation department. He wasn't just ambitious. He was a thief. He was using our money to pay his friends for doing nothing. I saved those files too. I collected everything. Every email where he repeated my ideas. Every memo where he took credit for Ben's work. Every falsified metric he had fabricated to boost his quarterly performance. For 3 weeks, I did this. I went to my empty desk. I smiled at people who ignored me. I looked busy, and I built my case. I didn't share my findings with the board. They were part of the problem. They were the ones who wanted me gone. They didn't want the truth. They wanted a smoother image. I shared my findings with only 2 people. The first was Ben, the quiet developer from the basement. He was now the head of engineering, and David hated him. David called him not a team player, because Ben kept telling him his bad ideas wouldn't work. I showed Ben the data. I didn't have to say anything. He just looked at the server logs and then at David's reports. His face went pale. "He's lying," Ben whispered. "He's lying to the board." "This is fraud." "I know," I said. "Can you get the server access logs from the night he ran these reports? I want to prove he pulled the real data and then changed it." Ben just nodded. "I'll have it in an hour." The second person was Mark, the founder. He was back from Asia. He was in town for 1 week. David had scheduled a huge all-hands meeting to impress him. To show him how strong the company was, I sent Mark an email. It was very short. Subject, Mark. "We need to talk." Body. "Hi Mark, I'm sending this to your private email. Not your company one. Attached is a single file. It shows what has been happening for the last 6 months. They are planning to fire me. David is making it public. I can live with that. But he is lying about the company. He is faking the numbers. He is stealing. He is risking everything we built in that basement. Read the file. That's all I ask, Ava." I attached the single protected PDF. It had everything. The fake reports. The real data. The expense reports. The emails. It was a perfect, quiet, and brutal timeline of David's entire con. I didn't need to fight him in the dark. I didn't need to leak it to the press. I just needed to make sure the truth walked into the light at the exact same moment he tried to push me out. I sent the email, and then I waited. 2 days later, David's assistant sent a calendar invite to the entire floor. "Team update and future vision," the subject line read. It was scheduled for 9 a.m. the next day. In the main conference space, I knew exactly what it was. This wasn't a team update. This was my execution. He wasn't just going to fire me. He was going to do it in front of everyone. He wanted to make an example of me. He wanted to show everyone what happens to legacy leadership. I accepted the invite. I picked out my outfit. It was the same simple, professional blue dress I had worn when I signed our first big contract. I got a good night's sleep. He just didn't realize I wasn't the one walking into an ambush. He was. The next morning, the air in the building was different. It was electric. I woke up before my alarm. I didn't feel nervous. I felt calm. It was the kind of calm you feel when the storm has already started, and you are just waiting for it to hit. I got dressed. I put on the blue dress. I put my hair up in a simple, clean twist. I did not put on much makeup. I wanted them to see my face. I walked out of my apartment. I didn't stop for coffee. I walked straight to the office. I was there at 8:30 a.m. The lobby was buzzing. David had done his work. There were people there I didn't recognize. Reporters, investors in expensive suits. They were all drinking coffee from the fancy new espresso machine David had installed. They were all here for the big announcement. They were here to hear about the future vision. David thought this was his coronation. He thought this was the day he would be crowned king, all while he publicly beheaded the old guard. Me. I walked past them. A few people nodded at me. They saw me as the operations person, the legacy woman who kept the lights on. They didn't see me as important. That was fine. I didn't need them to. I went to my desk. I sat down. I opened my computer. I saw the calendar reminder, team update and future vision, 9 CRM, main conference space. At 8:58 a.m. I stood up. I picked up my company notebook and a single pen. Nothing else, no laptop, no purse. I walked to the main conference space. It was packed. He had called the entire floor. Every employee, the marketing team, the developers, the accounting department, the HR people he had hired, they were all standing. The chairs had been pushed to the back. This wasn't a meeting. This was a spectacle. David was at the front. He was on a small temporary stage that he must have had brought in. He was wearing his most expensive suit. He looked like a talk show host. He was beaming. He was soaking in the attention. I saw Tom, my old mentee. He was in the back, avoiding my eyes. I saw Sarah from accounting. She looked pale. They all knew this was not a normal meeting. They were scared. They were like a herd of animals, and they could smell a predator. They were just hoping he wasn't there for them. I found a spot near the side wall. I didn't try to hide, but I didn't stand in the front. I just stood and I waited. David clapped his hands together. The sound was sharp. Everyone, thank you for coming, he boomed. His voice was too loud for the room. He started his speech. It was full of his usual words. Synergy. Future-proofing. A new paradigm. He talked about the future. He talked about the IPO. He talked about his vision for the company. He painted a beautiful picture of a future that I knew was built on his lies. I listened. I stayed perfectly still. He talked for 10 minutes. He was warming up the crowd. He was making himself look like a hero. We have made incredible progress, he said. We have optimized. We have streamlined. And we have grown. He looked around the room, his eyes scanning the crowd. But progress always comes with hard choices, he said. His voice dropped. It was a fake sad tone. Oh, I thought. Here it comes. His eyes landed on me. He held his gaze. He wanted everyone to see who he was looking at. We have a lot of history in this room, he said, still looking at me. A lot of legacy systems. And a lot of legacy leadership. The room went completely silent. You could hear the air conditioner hum. I saw Tom's head snap up. He looked at me, his eyes wide with horror. He finally understood. David smiled. It was a slow, cruel smile. He was a man about to make an example. He was a man who loved his own power. Ava, he said. He said my name. He projected it across the room. Every single head turned to me. I felt the heat of 200 eyes. I was suddenly an animal in a zoo. I was the center of his spotlight. I just looked back at him. I did not move. I did not speak. I did not cry. I just waited. He seemed disappointed that I wasn't crying. His smile tightened. Ava Collins, he said again, like he was introducing me. Ava has been with us for a long time. She's done some nice work. He paused. He wanted the words to hang in the air. But, he said, and his voice got louder, the board and I have decided that you've become a bottleneck. A bottleneck. He said it. He said it in front of everyone. He said it in front of the people I hired. The people I mentored. The people I had worked with for 11 years. I heard a gasp. It was Sarah. Then there was laughter. It wasn't from everyone, but it was from his people. The new HR team. The friends he had hired. They laughed. It was a shallow, mean sound. David smiled at the laughter. He had his audience. He had his humiliation. I stood there. I felt the blood draining from my face, but I kept my eyes on him. I memorized his face. I memorized the smirk. He had fired me in front of everyone. He had called me a bottleneck. He had tried to break me. He had tried to erase me. He thought he had won. I just stood there. I let the silence stretch. I let them all look at me, and then another voice cut through the air. It was not my voice. It was not David's voice. It was a voice from the back of the room. It was quiet, but it was cold. It cut through the laughter like a knife. Do you even know who she is? The laughter died instantly. It was like someone had hit a mute button. Every head, all 200 of them, snapped from me to the doorway. David's smile froze on his face. He looked confused. He looked annoyed that his show had been interrupted. I didn't turn around. I didn't have to. I knew that voice. Mark, the founder, was standing in the doorway. He wasn't supposed to be here. He wasn't supposed to be back for another week. He wasn't in a hospital bed. He wasn't pale, he was standing tall. And he looked angrier than I had ever seen him in my life. The silence in the room was no longer just quiet. It was heavy. It was a thick, crushing weight. Every person was frozen. David's fake smile was gone. It had slipped off his face, leaving behind a blank, confused expression. He looked like a man who had just walked into a wall. Mark stood in the doorway. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't running. He was just standing. He wore a simple black t-shirt and jeans. He looked like the man from the basement, but his eyes were not the eyes of a dreamer anymore. They were the eyes of an owner. They were cold. He took one step into the room. The sound of his shoe on the polished concrete floor echoed. Click. He took another step. Click. He was walking slowly, deliberately, from the back of the room toward the small stage where David stood. He didn't look at anyone else. His eyes were locked on David. With every step he took, the power in the room shifted. It was like a magnetic pull, turning from the front of the room, David, to the back, Mark. David finally found his voice. It was high and unnatural. Mark! What a surprise! David forced a laugh. It sounded like a cough. We weren't expecting you back until next week. Welcome home! We're just having a team update. Mark didn't stop walking. He didn't smile. He didn't say hello. He just kept walking until he was standing right in front of the little stage. He was looking up at David, and David, for the first time, looked small. A team update, Mark said. His voice was quiet, but it filled the room. Is that what you call this, David? A team update? I was just explaining the new paradigm, David stammered. He was trying to get his buzzwords back. He was trying to regain control. I was just making the hard choices, Mark. The ones you didn't want to. Mark looked at David. He looked at him for a long, terrible second. Then Mark turned his head. He looked at me. Our eyes met across the room. I was still standing by the wall. I hadn't moved. He looked at me and he gave one tiny nod. It wasn't a nod of pity. It was a nod of recognition. It was a nod that said, I know. I'm here. Then he turned back to David. You just fired the woman who built this company, he said. His voice was cold and clear. David's face went white. Now, Mark, let's be reasonable. Ava has done great work, but the role it's redundant. She's a bottleneck. Mark almost laughed. It was a bitter, sharp sound. A bottleneck? He looked around the room at all the employees. Do any of you know, he said, his voice rising just a little, that when I was in a hospital bed, when I was so sick I couldn't sign my own name, she ran this company? He pointed, not at me, but at the glass wall, at the city. She ran this company by herself for 9 months, Mark said. She didn't just keep the lights on. She turned our first ever profit. She signed the Apex contract. The one you were just bragging about in your email to the press, David. The one you are taking credit for. He pointed to Ben, the developer, who was standing near the front. Ben, do you remember when the servers crashed in 2017? The big one? When we almost lost our biggest client? Ben nodded, his eyes wide. Yeah, I remember. Who fixed it? Mark asked. Ben pointed at me. Ava did. She stayed here for 72 hours. She was on the phone with the client, calming them down. And she was on the floor, plugging cables back in with me. She learned how to do it herself. She saved us. The room was silent. People were looking at me now. Not with pity, but with awe. They were the new employees. They didn't know the history. They had only heard David's story, the one where I was legacy. Mark wasn't done. Every contract that keeps this place alive has her signature, Mark said, his voice like a hammer. Every client who stayed with us during the hard years. They stayed because of her. They didn't stay for our synergy. They didn't stay for your optimization. They stayed because Ava answered the phone. Because Ava solved the problem. Because Ava cared. David was shaking. I could see his hand trembling. He was trying to interrupt. Mark, listen. I respect that. I respect the history, David said, spitting the word out like it was poison. But this is the future. The board approved this decision. I have the emails. This is a board-level strategy. We have to modernize. We have to modernize? Mark said. Is that what you call it? He finally stepped up onto the little stage. He was standing next to David now. He was taller than David. Is faking your quarterly reports modernizing? If the room was silent before, it was a black hole now. All sound, all air was sucked out. David stopped. His mouth was open. He had no words. His face went from white to a strange, blotchy red. What? That's an accusation. That is slander, Mark, David said. He was trying to sound strong, but his voice was shaking. You can't. You called this meeting, David, Mark said. You brought the investors. I saw them in the lobby. You brought the press. You wanted an audience for your big moment. Mark turned to the crowd. David sent a report to the board last week, Mark said. It said our user engagement was up 30%. It said our new client acquisition was up 22%. He looked at David. David was staring at him, his eyes wide with panic. Those were good numbers, David, Mark said softly. They were really, really good. They were, in fact, too good to be true. Mark reached into his back pocket. He pulled out a folded piece of paper. Because the real numbers, Mark said, show that our engagement is down 8%, and our new client acquisition is flat. The only thing that's up is the number of free trials you're counting as new clients. David was breathing hard. You don't know what you're talking about. The board approved your strategy, Mark said, his voice dangerously calm. They approved firing Ava. They approved everything. Based on your reports. Based on your numbers. Mark looked at him. So let's see them. Mark turned his head. He looked straight at me. He didn't have to say anything. It was my cue. This was the moment. All the weeks of being ignored. All the whispers in the hallway. All the meetings I wasn't invited to. All the years of work he had tried to erase. It all came down to this. I was still standing by the wall. I hadn't moved. David was on the stage, frozen. He was looking at Mark, and his face was a mask of pure, primal fear. He had been caught. Mark was looking at me. He had given me the cue. I took a breath. I pushed myself off the wall. I started to walk. Just like Mark had, I walked from my spot at the side of the room. I walked toward the stage. Click, click, click. My simple, practical shoes on the concrete floor. Every eye was on me now. But it was different. It wasn't pity. It wasn't shame. It was anticipation. I was no longer the victim. I was the witness. David saw me walking. He looked like a cornered animal. Ava? Ava, stop, he said. He tried to make it sound like an order. This is not your concern. This is a private matter between me and Mark. I didn't stop. I kept walking until I was at the edge of the little stage. I stopped, right in front of him. I looked up at him. I had my notebook in my left hand. My simple black pen in my right. I didn't have a folder. I didn't have a stack of papers. I didn't need one. You're right, David, I said. My voice was quiet. I was not yelling. But everyone heard me. It is about the reports. I looked at Mark. Mark, he didn't just fake the numbers. I looked back at David. His eyes were begging me. Don't do this. He faked them. Using a simple script, I said. He told the system to count email signups as new clients. And he told the system to count app opens as active engagement. He didn't even do it himself. He had his new innovation head do it. Ben, the developer, let out a small sound. The logs. That's what it was. I saw that change in the code. David was frantic. It's called redefining metrics. It's standard practice. We are future-proofing our data. And what about the budget? I asked, my voice still quiet, still calm. David froze. The budget, David? I asked. The one you optimized? I opened my notebook. It was my old notebook, the one I had used for 11 years. It was full of my simple, neat handwriting. I flipped to a page. You cut the snack budget for the developers. You said it saved $10,000 a year, I said. But you spent $12,000 in 2 months on dinners at the Capitol Grill. You listed them as client development. But you never listed a client. I called the restaurant. They said it was always a table for two. You and Andrew. Andrew was the friend he had hired. The head of innovation. The room was dead. Silent. That's a lie, David yelled. He was losing it. His professional mask was cracking. Is it? I said. I flipped the page. What about the $50,000 consulting fee? The one you paid to Global Strategy Solutions LLC? I looked up at him. I looked up that LLC, David. It was registered 6 weeks ago. The address is Andrew's apartment. You paid $50,000 of company money to your friend's fake company. Fraud, Mark said, his voice flat. That is called fraud, David snapped. You, he screamed. He pointed at me. His finger was shaking. You did this, you legacy. You were supposed to be gone. The board wanted you gone. The board wanted a bottleneck gone, Mark said. The board wanted a problem fixed. They just didn't realize. You are the problem, David. Mark looked at the 2 security guards who were always at the front desk. They had come to the back of the room when they heard the yelling. Gentlemen, Mark said. Mr. Miller is terminated. Effective immediately, please. Escort him out. The same silence that had once been used to humiliate me. It now wrapped around David like a verdict. He was stunned. He looked at Mark. He looked at me. He looked at the guards. You can't, he stammered. You can't do this. I have a contract. The board. The board will be speaking with the police, Mark said. And our lawyers. About the $50,000. And the reports. Now, please, leave. The two guards, big men in simple black suits, walked onto the stage. They each stood on one side of David. They didn't touch him. They just stood there. And for the first time, his perfect, tailored confidence cracked. It shattered. He looked at the crowd. He was looking for an ally. He was looking for anyone. He saw his innovation head Andrew in the crowd. Andrew was already moving. He was pushing his way through the crowd, heading for the exit. He was running. David saw Sarah. She was looking at him with pure disgust. He saw Tom. Tom was looking at the floor, in shame. He had no one. He had built his entire kingdom on fear and fake promises, and in 1 second it was all gone. He tried to speak. He opened his mouth. No sound came out. You need me. He finally choked out. This company, the IPO, you need me. Mark didn't even look at him. He looked at me. Then he looked at the crowd. We already have the person who made you look competent, Mark said. The guards put their hands on David's arms. Don't touch me, he shrieked. But it was too late. They walked him off the stage. They walked him through the crowd of his own employees. The employees parted. No one looked at him. No one said a word. I watched him go. I watched as the glass doors of the conference room closed behind him. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I didn't say, I told you so. I just gathered my notebook, my pen, and my calm. Because when justice finally arrives, it doesn't need applause. It just needs to be seen. The glass doors closed. David was gone. The room was still full. 200 people were still standing there. They were all in shock. The air was heavy, but the tension had broken. It was replaced by a kind of stunned silence. They all looked at the stage. They looked at Mark, and they looked at me. I was still standing on the floor. Mark was still on the little stage. He looked down at me. Then he looked at the crowd. Well, Mark said. He ran a hand through his hair. It was the most Mark thing he had done all day. That was not the team update I was expecting. A few people let out a nervous laugh. The tension broke. So, what happens now? It was Ben. He was looking at Mark. The investors, the press, they're still in the lobby. They think David is in charge, Mark finished. He nodded. Right. We have some cleanup to do. He looked at the crowd. Listen, everyone. I know this was a lot. What David did was a betrayal. He betrayed me. He betrayed this board. But most of all, he betrayed all of you. He betrayed the work. He took a breath. The company is not David. The company is us. It's you. It's the developers. It's the sales team. It's the people who answer the phones. It's always been. He looked at me. He held out his hand. Ava, he said. Get up here. I hesitated. I looked at his hand. This was not what I expected. I expected justice. I did not expect this. The entire room was watching me. I put my notebook under my arm, and I took his hand. He pulled me up onto the small stage. I stood next to him. We were facing the company, our company, first, Mark said, his voice strong and clear. I need to apologize. I failed. I brought David in. I hired him. I trusted him. I wasn't here. I was traveling. I was looking at the future, and I forgot to protect the present. And the present is Ava. I am so sorry, Ava, he said, turning to me. What he did, what I let him do, was unforgivable. I am sorry. I looked at him. The real Mark, the man from the basement. You're here now, Mark, I said. It was all I could say. I'm here now, he agreed. He turned back to the crowd. So, here is the new plan, he said. Effective immediately. Ava Collins is the new acting CEO. The room, it was like a bomb went off. A good bomb. First there was a gasp. Then Ben, the quiet developer, started to clap. He just started clapping, slow and steady. Then Sarah from accounting started clapping. Then Tom. And then, in a wave, the entire room. All 200 people. They were clapping. They were clapping for me. I felt my eyes burn. I had not cried when David fired me. I had not cried when he humiliated me, but now I felt tears welling up. I was not legacy. I was not a bottleneck. I was home. Mark smiled. He motioned for them to quiet down. She's going to be a great CEO, he said. But first, she's going to be our chief operating officer, which she always was. We are just making it official again. He looked at me. Is that okay? I nodded. I couldn't speak. Good, he said. Now, we have a lobby full of reporters and investors who just heard a lot of yelling. We can't let them leave thinking the company is on fire. He looked at me. Ava, what do we tell them? This was it. The power had returned. I took a deep breath. The calm was back. The fear was gone. I knew exactly what to do. I had always known what to do. We tell them the truth, I said. My voice was clear. It didn't shake. We tell them we discovered a serious compliance issue. We tell them our internal controls worked. We tell them we found fraudulent reporting from a single senior-level executive. I looked at Mark. We tell them that executive has been terminated, and that the board is pursuing all legal options. Mark was smiling. And I said, we tell them the founder Mark is back, and that he has appointed me, Ava Collins, as acting CEO to ensure stability and guide the company to its IPO. We tell them the company is stronger than ever, because it is. Mark laughed. It was a real happy laugh, see? He said to the room. Backbone. He turned to me. Go, he said. Go tell them. I'll be right behind you. I nodded. I turned. I walked off the stage. I walked toward the glass doors, the ones that David had been pushed through. As I walked, the crowd of employees. They parted for me, but it wasn't like it was for David. They didn't look away in shame. They looked at me. They smiled. Tom reached out and touched my arm. Ava, I am so sorry. Congratulations. Thank you, Tom, I said. We have work to do. Yes, he said. Yes, we do. I got to the door. I looked back one last time. Mark was on the stage. Ben and Sarah were already talking to him. The company was already healing. It was already working. I pushed the glass door open. I walked into the lobby. The reporters and investors all turned. They saw me. They saw the blood had been on the floor. Ms. Collins, one of the reporters called out. What happened? We heard yelling. Where is Mr. Miller? I stopped. I stood in the middle of the lobby. I smoothed the front of my blue dress. I looked at them all, and I started to tell them the truth. The elevator ride up to my old office was quiet. It had been 3 hours. The investors were gone. The reporters were gone. The police had come, and they had gone, taking with them a box of files from David's office. Mark had handled the investors. He was a founder, and they trusted him. He told them the truth. He told them I had found the fraud. He told them I had saved the company. Again, I handled the press. I gave them the statement. Calm, composed, underestimated. I told them there had been a leadership change. I told them we were excited about the future. Now I was walking back to my floor. When the elevator doors opened, it was quiet. The team update was over. Everyone was back at their desk. But as I walked out, the sound of typing stopped. One by one, people looked up. Ben, Sarah, Tom, all the developers, all the marketers. No one spoke. And then, just like they had in the meeting, they stood up, one by one, and they started to clap. It wasn't a loud, wild applause. It was a standing ovation. It was quiet. It was steady. It was respect. I stood there in the middle of the office I had built. I looked at the people I had hired. I nodded. I couldn't smile, not a big smile. But I nodded. Thank you, I whispered. We have a lot of work to do. Let's get back to it. The clapping stopped. The sound of typing started again. It was the best sound in the world. I walked to my office, the one I had been in for 10 years. I walked past David's corner office. The door was open. It was empty. A cleaning crew was already inside, boxing up his expensive abstract art. I got to my desk. It was exactly as I had left it. My notebook, my pen, my calm. I sat down. I got an email. It was from Mark. Subject, welcome back, boss. Body, they're all yours. I exhaled. It wasn't a breath of triumph. It was a breath of closure. Revenge isn't chaos. It isn't screaming. It isn't a dramatic movie-like explosion. Sometimes revenge is just clarity. It's the truth. It's staying quiet, collecting the facts, and waiting for the right audience David had tried to make me legacy. He tried to make me a bottleneck. He tried to erase me. But he didn't understand. You can't erase the foundation. You can't erase the backbone. The elevator doors closed and I exhaled. In that quiet, glass-walled room, I reclaimed both.